Hi friends, in this video I am going to continue Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So let's continue from where we left. So we left from uh, and Aunt Petunia had to run and get him a large brandy. So we will start from Harry. Harry lay in his dark cupboard much later, wishing he had a watch. He didn't know what time it was, and he couldn't be sure Dursleys were asleep yet. Until they were, he couldn't risk sneaking to the kitchen for some food. He did lived with Dursleys almost 10 years, 10 miserable years, as long as he could remember, ever since he had been a baby and his parents had died in a car crash. He couldn't remember being in a car when his parents had died. Sometimes, when he strained his memory during long hours in his cupboard, he came up with a strange vision, a blinding flash of green light and a burning pain on his forehead. This, he supposed, was the car crash, though he couldn't imagine where all the green light came from. He couldn't remember his parents at all. His aunt and uncle never spoke about them, and of course, he was forbidden to ask questions. There were no photographs of them in the house. When he had been younger, Harry had dreamed and dreamed of some unknown relation coming to take him away, but it had never happened. The Dursleys were his only family, yet sometimes he thought, or maybe hoped, that strangers in streets seemed to know him. Very strange strangers. They were too. A tiny man in a violet top and hat bowed to him once while out shopping with Aunt Petunia and Dudley. After asking Harry furiously if he knew the man, Aunt Petunia had rushed them out of the shop without buying anything. A wild old-looking woman dressed all in green had waved merrily at him once on a bus. A bald man in very long purple coat had actually shaken his hand in the street the other day. He had then walked away without a word. The weirdest thing about all these people was the way they seemed to vanish the second Harry tried to get closer to look. At school, Harry had no one. Everybody knew that Dudley's gang hated that odd Harry Potter in his baggy old clothes and broken glasses, and nobody liked to disagree with Dudley's gang. Chapter 3: The Letters from No One. The escape of Brazilian boa constrict earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started and Dudley had already broken his new giant cinema, crashed his remote control aeroplane, and first time on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Fig as she crossed Pivot Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Pierce, Dennis, McCallum, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of all the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Vermon's old school, Smeltings. Pierce Pockets was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High School. The local compressive Dudley, though this was very Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's head down the toilet first day at Stonewall. He told Harry, "Want to come upstairs and practice?" "No thanks," said Harry. "The poor toilets never had anything as horrible as your head down in it. It might be stick. Then he ran before Dudley could work out what he had said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform. Leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she had broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of cake that tasted as though she had had it for several years. That evening, Dudley padded around the living room for the family in his new brand uniform. Smelting's boy wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobby sticks used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be a good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vermont said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it was her Ike Dudkins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought two two of his ribs might already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There were a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning when Harry went in for the breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in grey water. "What's this?" he asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips threatened, as they always did if he dared to ask a question. "Your new school uniform," she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. "Oh," he said, "I didn't realize it had to be so wet." "Don't be stupid," snapped Aunt Petunia. "I am dyeing some of Dudley's old things grey for you. It will look just like everyone else when I have finished." Harry seriously doubted this, but he thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High, like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin. Probably. Dudley and Uncle Vermont came in both with wrinkled noses, but of the smell Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vermont opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. They heard the they heard the click of the letterbox and flop on the doormat. Get the post, Dudley said. Get the post, Dudley said Uncle Vermont from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get get the post, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dogged the smelting stick and went to get the post. Three things lay on the doormat. A postcard from Uncle Vermont's sister Marge, who was holidaying on the ice, white, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. So, friends, here our reading of the day finishes. So, now I am going to end the video as we have read 5 pages. So, now let's bye bye.